How to crochet the quadrangle blanket. Alrighty, we are going to start off our blanket with making 25 squares. Now, I chose for my sample to make 13 of one color and 12 of the opposite color. So I'm making 12 squares that look like this, 13 squares that look like this. Obviously, the only difference is this main color. I have the kind of darker, almost purple color, which is my C2, as the 13 square color, and then for this other square I have this light pink color. You could totally have so much fun with all of the colors in this blanket. You could do different colors for, this section, and this section, and then kind of change them up for squares. You could do different colors for the single crochet rounds. Definitely have fun with this project. Use as many colors as you want. Do whatever suits you the best. But for this specific design, I am using 2 different colors. So I'm going to show you how to make 1 square, and then I will leave you to create the other 24. So I'm using a 7mm crochet hook, and I'm going to pull up my contrast 2 color yarn first. I have linked all the materials that you're going to be needing for this project down in the description box below, as well as some more information on the yarn that I'm using, and the written pattern. So definitely check out all of that if you haven't already. Now we're going to go ahead and get started with a magic ring. Now, if you prefer to not do magic rings, I totally understand. You could simply make a slip knot, chain 3, and then slip stitch to that first stitch to form your own ring. But I do love magic rings myself, so that's what I'm going to be using for this tutorial. To do that, I'm just going to wrap the yarn around twice, my first 2 fingers crossing in the back, just like so. I'll hold that with my other 3 fingers, and then I'm going to insert my hook under the first strand, over the second, and grab it, twist it, and then take it off my fingers and chain 1 to lock that ring. And there we go. There's my magic ring. So then I am just going to chain 1 more to get to that chain 2 and start round 1. For round 1, we are going to work 3 double crochets into the ring. There's 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 2, and we're going to do that a total of 4 times. So I've done it once. I'm going to do it 3 more times. So 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and then 3 more double crochets, 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and then 1 more time, 3 double crochets. Oh, lost it there. 1, 2, and 3, and chain 2 for the last time. Okay, and there's our completion of round 1, excuse me. We're just going to finish this off by slip stitching to that very first double crochet stitch, which is right here. So this chain 2 does not count as a stitch. It just simply gets us to that right height, so that our double crochets are nice and even. We're going to slip stitch that first stitch, just like so. Now for round 2, we're still sticking with this contrast 1 color. Again, you can substitute in the pattern if you're following along. You can substitute whatever colors you want. But again, for this, I'm just referring to this color as my contrast 1. Okay, we're going to start off round 2 by chaining 2. And then we're going to double crochet in each stitch until we get to that chain 2 space. So for me, for this round, it's going to be 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, and then double crochet in that last one. And then into our chain 2 space, we're going to work 1 double crochet, chain 2, and then 1 more double crochet, all into that chain 2 space. And then we're just going to repeat that 3 more times. So double crochet in each stitch until you get to the next chain 2 space, 2 and 3, and then double crochet, chain 2, and double crochet into that chain 2 space. Again, double crochet in each stitch until you get to the chain 2 space, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and then for the very last time in this round, double crochet in each stitch until you get to the chain 2 space, and then double crochet, chain 2, and double crochet into that chain 2 space. And there we go. And then just like before, and the same for every round, we're going to slip stitch to that very first stitch to close it. Now, when you are on at the end of a round that requires a color change like this one, so now I'm ready to add in my contrast color for the single crochet round. I'm going to bring that up, and for me it is this gray. And I'm going to hope that my yarn doesn't get tangled over here on the side. That'll be fun to deal with. Okay, so I'm going to finish off my slip stitch with this gray color instead of the dark pink. So I'm going to lay that over my hook, pull through just like normal, both those loops on the hook, and then I like to pull that dark pink nice and tight. And there we go. I have switched colors. Now, one last thing I'm going to do here is cut this dark pink color. It's completely up to you. You can either cut it or you can leave it going and carry it up the entire work. I guess I'll leave mine attached so that I can show you how to carry it up. But if you like to work with as minimal ends as possible or minimal balls attached, you could totally cut this after every color change. Again, it's completely up to you. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that attached, I think, so that I can give you a better representation. And now I'm just going to start my round 3, and this is our contrast round. So this is going to be our single crochet round that will work a total of 3 times. We're going to chain 1, and then single crochet in each stitch across until you get to that chain 2 space. So I'm just going to single crochet in each stitch all the way across, and there we go. And then into that chain 2 space, we are going to work 2 single crochets, chain 2, and then 2 more single crochets. Just like that. So that gives us a nice, sharp, rounded corner, and it'll help our square lay flat as we keep going. Now we're going to go ahead and continue. We're going to single crochet in each stitch until we reach the chain 2 space, just like before. And then once we reach that space, we will work 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 more single crochets. So I'm just going to repeat that 2 more times to get me back to the beginning of my round, and then I will meet you back here. Okay, so I have worked all the way to my last corner, and I went ahead and did the 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 more single crochets. Now in this round, I do have 1 more double crochet left before I get to that beginning of the round. So make sure that you don't miss that. It's definitely going to become more evident that more stitches are here as our square grows. But for that round 3, it can be easy to miss that stitch, and we definitely don't want to do that. So I finished that last stitch. And then because I just finished round 3, I'm ready to switch back to my pink color. So I'm going to drop the gray just like I did before, and then bring up this pink again and lay that over the hook to yarn over and pull through both loops to switch colors. So if you decided to cut your yarn and not carry it up, it's super simple. You can just do exactly what we did with the gray, lay that new strand of yarn over your hook and pull through both. It's very similar the way that you do it. It just, if you carry the yarn up, it's a lot less ends to weave in, which is very nice, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so we are now ready to begin round 4. Now, rounds 4 and 5 are exactly the same as round 2, but I'm going to show you how to work this full repeat once more, and then I'll leave you to it to work it one more time on your own. So, I'm going to go ahead and get started with round 4. We're going to chain 2, and then you know the drill, we're going to double crochet in each stitch across until we get to that chain 2 space, and then we will work into that. There we go. So now into this chain 2 space, we're going to work 1 double crochet, chain 2, and 1 double crochet just like before. And then we will double crochet in each stitch until we get to our next chain 2 space, or our next corner, whichever makes the most sense to you. And I am almost there. Pull some more yarn here. There we go, and then once you get to that space, simply work 1 double crochet, chain 2, and then 1 more double crochet. There we go. So I'm going to repeat that 2 more times, and then I will meet you back here to finish off this round. I just worked into that last corner, and now I'm going to double crochet in each of these last few stitches until I get to my beginning of round, just like that. Be sure to not work into that slip stitch right here that we are not counting as a stitch. Okay, and now I'm going to slip stitch to my very first stitch, and I'm just going to repeat that entire round once again for my round 5 we're on. I had to count really quick. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that same exact round that I just did one more time. Okay, I am back to the beginning of my round. I just completed round 5, so now I'm going to slip stitch and switch colors to work my second contrast round. So I'm just going to bring up this gray. As you're bringing it up, make sure to leave a little bit of slack. You don't want to pull too tight or it will cause our square to be a little bit cinched. So we are just going to gently lay that yarn over the entire 2 rows there and then slip stitch just like that. Okay, and we are ready to work our single crochet round again. It is exactly the same as before. So we are just going to chain 1, single crochet in each stitch until we get to our first chain 2 space. So just single crochet 1 in each of those stitches. There we go. And then once you get to that first chain 2 space, we're going to work 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 more single crochets. Just like that. And we're going to work that all the way around. So again, that's just single crochet in each stitch until you get to the next chain 2 space. And then once you get to that chain 2 space, work 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 more single crochets. Back at the beginning of my round, I'm going to slip stitch and bring up the pink again, just like that. And now I'm just going to work those last 3 rounds once more. So we're going to work the same exact rows 4, 5, and 6. We're going to repeat those 3 one more time, and then I will come back. Okay, so I just repeated those last 3 rows, and now I am ready for my final border round, which is going to be a second row with the gray color or the contrast color. So I have slip stitched, and now I'm going to chain 1. For this round, we are simply going to single crochet in each stitch, just like we've been doing, until we get to that chain 2 space. Single crochet in each and every stitch until you get to that corner space. I am almost there. And then into this chain 2 space, work 1 single crochet, chain 1, and 1 more single crochet. So that just gives us a nice rounded edge to finish off the square. And I'm just going to repeat that 3 more times around. So single crochet in each stitch, and then work 1 single crochet, chain 1, and 1 single crochet into that corner space. Okay, so I just finished that last round, and I went ahead and slip stitched to the very first stitch, and now I am simply going to cut this gray yarn. And that's it for this square. So now simply repeat all of those instructions for our entire square 24 more times to get a total of 25 squares, and then meet me back here to seam all of them together to form our blanket. Okay, so I have all of my squares all complete. There seems like there's a lot more than 25, I'm not gonna lie, but there's just 25. Now, seaming a blanket on camera is very tricky. I'm not going to lie. The frame is nowhere near big enough to hold the entire blanket. So what I'm going to do is show you the basics of this technique. I'm going to grab a couple of squares and show you the seaming technique that I'm going to be using. But I'm really just going to leave you to it. You can use any seaming technique that you want for these squares. I'm going to be using a slip stitch technique today. But like I said, you can use absolutely any technique that you prefer. So I'm going to grab a couple of squares here and set the rest aside so that I can show you how to do the seaming process. So I'm going to be using the gray yarn for this, and I do recommend unless you're using a different technique, I recommend using whatever yarn that you chose for this border color for the seaming technique. And then I'm also going to line up my squares in the order that I want them to be. So for me, I'm going to be alternating the darker pink and the lighter pink. So this is going to be like my left-hand corner, bottom corner of the blanket, and then this will be the square that goes beside it. And then like this will be the next square up here, and so on and so forth. I am also going to be working on the wrong side of my work, so I'm actually going to flip all of these around. And then I'm basically going to be like sandwiching them together. Now ideally I would have all 5 of my squares lined up here, and then I would slip stitch all the way down, but for the purposes of this tutorial I am simply just going to work with these 2 just to show you how to do it, basically. So I'm going to grab my hook, and I'm going to grab these 2 squares to start on the rightmost side. I'm going to hold them together with the right sides together, just like this. And then I'm going to start in this corner, so I'm going to join my yarn, or my hook, excuse me. I'm going to insert it into that chain 1 space of one of these corners. And then I'm simply going to slip stitch that together. So I'm going to pull through, chain 1 just to kind of lock it in place. And then I'm going to insert my hook again and work a slip stitch. And then I'm going to like open it up just a little bit so that I can kind of see both stitches here. Let me get those out of the way so that you can fully see this. Bring my yarn over here. There we go. You can also just kind of, I don't know, put that tail in whatever way makes it more comfortable for you. So I'm going to insert my hook into the next 2 stitches. So I'm working into the next stitch on the first square, the second square, and then slip stitch that together. And then we're just going to repeat that all the way across. Okay, I made it to that very last, or that next corner, excuse me. So both of those squares are now slip stitched together. We do have a little ridge that's going to be on the inside of our blanket. And then if we flip it over, this is what it looks like on the opposite side. So we have our nice and neat seam. I really like how this looks, but once again, feel free to use whatever technique that you prefer. And then I'm going to add my next 2 squares. Now, once again, you're basically just going to repeat this process until you've worked the entire width of your blanket. But for me, I'm just going to do this small little sample here for you today. So I have my next square that's going to go right beside this light pink one. And then same up here, I have the right sides together. I'm going to keep my yarn exactly how it is. So put it in the back there. And then I'm going to insert my hook into the corners again. So I have that chain 1 space, and then the next chain 1 space, if I can find it. Let's see, there it is right there. And then I will slip stitch into both of those. And then again, we're just going to work all the way across this entire row, slip stitching those ends together. And then I will meet you back once I reach the end of this row here. I'm going to show you how to work vertically to do that vertical seam on the other side. So I have seamed those 2 squares together, and just to try to explain it again, you would simply repeat this same exact process for however many squares that you have. So this is going to be joining the first 2 rows of this blanket. Because we have worked 25 squares, it's going to be a 5 square by 5 square blanket. Each square or each row, each row or each column is going to have 5 squares within it. So I would do the same exact thing for my next 3 squares, so to total 5 squares across. I hope that makes sense. If you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comment section below. So I'm going to pretend that my blanket is done being seamed. It's not, but for the purpose of this tutorial, it is. So I'm going to cut that yarn right there. And then I am simply going to flip it around, hold it like this, and then seam up the vertical side here. Now I only have one to seam right now because, again, this is just a sample, but you would do the same exact thing that I'm about to show you 4 more times for your other columns. Okay, so I'm going to join my hook, or insert my hook into the corner space, just like we were doing for the rows. It is the same exact technique. I'm going to grab my yarn, place it over the hook, and then start slip stitching. So again, I'm sandwiching the squares together, holding the right sides together, and I'm just going to slip stitch all the way across. And then once I get to that center section where we have our slip stitch, I'll show you how to work over that. Okay, so I have made it all the way to that center seam. Now there's a whole bunch of different ways you could just skip right over the seam. You could chain one and then skip it. You could slip stitch through it. It's completely up to you. All I'm going to do is work one more slip stitch right in this corner here to make it extra secure. And then I'm going to skip right over that that seam, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to slip stitch in the very next 2 stitches to make it extra secure. And there we go. That's all I'm going to do. And then I will just slip stitch in each of these stitches across, and I'll repeat this same technique for my entire blanket. Okay, so I have now completely seamed my entire blanket. And I'm ready to add a border. Now this is going to be a super simple, just a regular single crochet round border. You can do whatever type of border that you'd like, but I'm just going to keep it simple and do a single crochet one. You can start on any edge, any spot along the blanket. I recommend starting like about in the middle of a square on any of the sides, just for it to be a little bit easier or more hidden. So I'm just going to insert my hook into any stitch along the side here and pull up my yarn. I'm going to use my darker pink contrast color, but you could use any color. I think it would also look good in just the gray, but I'm just going to use this dark pink today. I think I'm going to like how it looks. So I'm just going to chain one to lock that in place, and also move my yarn again because I keep making that mistake. And let's crochet. So just like normal, we're literally just going to single crochet in every single stitch, just one, until we get to each corner, and then we will round that corner off. Now, for each of the sections where you placed where the edges meet up and you did your slip stitch join, I'm just going to work directly into that with one stitch, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm crocheting all the way down until I get to that first join. And then once I get there, I'm just going to place one single crochet stitch in the middle of that. So roughly the middle, it doesn't really matter. But I'm just going to insert my hook kind of wherever it'll go, honestly. The slip stitches are going to be tight, and that is 100% what you want. It's just going to be a little bit tricky to get your hook in there. So I'm just going to insert my hook like that, pull it up, and there we go. That's what it's going to look like. So I'm going to work that all the way around. And then I will meet you back here when I get to the first corner over here and show you how to round that off. Okay, so I've made it to my first corner, and it is also my chain one space. So this is the very last round that we did on each square. I'm going to insert my hook into that chain one space, and then just work 3 single crochets into that. So there's 1, 2, and 3, and that just gives us a nice, sharp, rounded corner to kind of make our blanket look nice and neat. And we're just going to repeat that all the way around. So single crochet across each stitch, until you get to the next corner, and then work 3 single crochets into that corner until you get back to the first stitch. Alrighty, I have crocheted around the entirety of my blanket, and now I'm just going to slip stitch to this very first stitch of my border, cut my yarn, just like that, leaving just a little bit of a tail to weave in later, and our blanket is now complete.
you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable to follow along with, and I also hope that you love your finished object. Be sure that I have included all of the links to the materials that I used, the materials that you'll need, and all of the links to the pattern in the description box below, as well as links to my other social media platforms and pattern shops. So just be sure to check all of that out if you are so desired to do so. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any future tutorials, and then click that notification bell right beside it so that you get a little alert every time I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy making. Bye!